Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. And today we are going to talk about a very exciting topic that everybody feels excited about. That is going to be building team for your digital transformation initiative. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our digital transformation series that we bring every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And we always bring a very exciting panel that is going to have subject matter expertise in that specific topic. So today as well, we have very exciting panelists. They are going to be introducing themselves. So we are going to start with Ryan. Do you want to introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
100%. So my name is Ryan. I am the Director of Business Development at Change Connect, which is a nonstop shop for anything sales related regarding consulting, training, coaching, fractional sales management, all the way up to CRM and ERP implementations. So that's what we do. We're a small, scrappy startup of 6 people right now, but we're looking to grow and we're looking to expand kind of into we deal with SMBs right now, but we're looking to get into larger companies and give help where we can as the company scales.
Okay, thank you so much, Ryan, for that intro. And the reason why I brought you on this panel, I always like to add that, you have a lot of experience overall in the supply chain, and then you have a lot of experience from the sales side of the house, and then you have led a lot of implementations yourself in the logistics world. So you are actually going to bring a very unique experience to the forum. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself next, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Paul Serafino, and I run a company called Accelerated Journey. It's a coaching company. So we work with management teams and executives, typically in small and medium-sized businesses, to help them basically scale up their own personal influence and impact within the business, and doing things like developing and building stronger teams.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul, for the intro. And Paul's background is amazing. He has a lot of experience in lean manufacturing. So again, he brings very unique experience to the table in looking from the manufacturing perspective. Now, next, I'm actually going to move to Chris. And a lot of people might be thinking that, Chris is probably the sponsor of the show because he's always here. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Chris Gherardini, president and owner of Turnkey Technologies. We're a 27-year-old Microsoft Dynamics ERP and CRM licensing and implementation partner. Glad to be here.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. And Chris, as you guys know, if you have been on the show for some time, then Chris brings very deep experience in the implementation from the ERP perspective. Again, that experience we don't have in the room. So thank you so much for joining us, Chris. Jennifer, do you want to introduce yourself, if you don't mind?
Sure, I can do that. Hi, my name is Jennifer Herron, CEO and founder of Action Engineering. And at Action Engineering, we're helping companies use their 3D CAD data in the design, fabrication, and inspection space, and using that to automate their design and documentation and results processes so that you can take advantage of some of that automation of digital data over 2D drawings that tend to rely a lot on a lot of manual handoffs.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that intro, Jennifer. And you are going to have slightly more engineering representation. Our goal is to bring, all facets of the organization, especially from the manufacturing perspective. So, Jennifer, you bring a very unique experience to the panel. And Amanda, now to you. Obviously, you are, involved in the change management space. You are probably going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting today in the show. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here, Sam. So Amanda Prochaska, I'm the CEO of Wonder Services. And Wonder Services is all about how do we have people within the organizations accept the change that you're moving forward with. So whether it's digital transformation, ERP, or any other organizational change, we help the people accept and adapt that change. So I have 16 years in the Fortune 500 space, particularly in procurement. So I have a lot of opportunity to apply this, but then decided to do something really crazy and go out on my own. So I've been doing that for the last several years.
Awesome. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for that intro, Amanda. And again, you bring very unique experience from the procurement perspective, ERP implementation. So your experience is going to be unique as well. Now, what we are going to do, number one, we need to agree on what we are trying to accomplish as part of the panel, so that our audience is aware, what they should be expecting at the end of the panel. And obviously, you need to know what we are trying to do here. The objective here is to make sure that our executives who are listening to this show right now, they should have enough information to be able to build digital teams. If they are working on any specific digital initiatives, they should have all the things that they need to do in building the digital teams. So one of the things that are going to be significantly important is developing some sort of criteria, because once we have the criteria, then the decision making is going to be slightly easier who to select. So let's talk about criteria. So what are some of the factors? And Amanda, I'm actually going to start with you. So in building digital teams, what are some of the factors that you have seen are going to be extremely important?
No. So I think of two things. I think of the time that they're dedicating and then the criteria of how they lead. So I always like to look at it from a kind of a top-down approach when it comes to a team. Getting the right leader in the mix is critically important. So first, let's talk about time though. So time, dedication to a project. So often I see that we can't free up people to be focused on a project. And I think that slows down the effectiveness, and then also it just bifurcates the overall priority of what that leader needs to accomplish. So I would like to look at, can that leader of the program be freed up and be dedicated to this initiative as much as possible? Then from a leadership standpoint, are they influential within the organization? Have they sat in the seat of the people that are being impacted by this change? Do they have the right relationships across to make sure that they can bring other people along with them? So I look at a lot of those soft skills when it comes to the leader of the program. And then obviously we rely on them to pick the people that need to do the work within the team itself. But that's really where I start from, Sam, is what are those soft skills? How do they influence? How do they lead, build teams? And are they going to be able to be dedicated to the program?
Yeah, you are hitting on some very important point, especially around having the realistic expectations, dedicating the time in building the teams, in making sure you have enough time to be able to execute the project, then having the right leader and the mix, and then, making sure you have influence on the team as well. And then the soft skills, obviously, those are going to be super, super, super important. I completely agree with everything that you said. Jennifer, now you have the practical experience of building your own team. You are a digital company, if I think about it, right? So from your experience, do you agree with Amanda? Do you disagree with Amanda? Do you have anything to add when it comes to factors in selecting the team?
Yeah, she's spot on. It's something that we see when we go in to help a company implement model-based definition or using CAD models throughout their enterprise. We start with exactly the same thing. We would like to have an enterprise-wide team with multiple perspectives. I really appreciate what you say about having a leader that has influence. It's really, really important. I've seen it where you have a leader that doesn't have any influence financially or socially, and it really all just falls apart. And then the second thing, well, actually the first thing you said was about dedication. Often in my business, people think they can turn on the MBD tool and they're done. But it really takes a dedicated team of internal people to transform the culture and the processes, because it's not just about turning on a tool. It is about evaluating your processes as you do them today, and then leveraging the digital tools and automation to make what you do better today. So I think we're in perfect alignment, Sam.
Yeah, you are. And by the way, you added some of the things that are super important, especially your comment about having this team enterprise wide. I think that is very important. That's exactly what we like to do in these
Critical.
forums as well, to bring different expertise and not just duplicating the same expertise, because that's not going to add any value. So I think that is really important in getting that cross-functional expertise, so that everybody comes to the table, everybody is represented in the team. And then you mentioned the leadership with influence. You are agreeing with Amanda. And one of the things that I would like to mention from my experience and the story, I was interviewing a person called Joanne. I don't know, Joanne Martinez. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know her. She's amazing. She's phenomenal. And she does a lot of, the coaching classes for the leaders. And she used one term called lip service. A lot of leaders that are going to be in the top-down leadership position, they simply try to pretend that they understand things. But when you talk about the influence, you really need to know what you are talking about, okay? At least at the conceptual level, then you are going to be able to build that influence and build that leadership that you are going to need. Then people are actually going to respect you, and they will respect you as a leader. Then you don't have to work as much, but you cannot be lip service as a leader. So now, Ryan, I'm actually going to move to you. What are some of the factors that you have seen in your experience that are super important to build a team? Ryan, you're on mute, I guess.
I just noticed too. I think one of the most important things that I've seen and that I tried to do in the past when I've built teams during implementation is I do a quick motivation survey. And I think to myself, okay, I'm going to talk to my people, find out what the motivations are for this project. So if it's an ERP implementation, I need to make sure that I understand the motivations of finance and sales and supply chain and logistics. And then once I do that for two reasons. Number one, I know that once I get the motivations down, it's an easy way to find my internal champions, because then at that point I know that they're motivated to help out and that they'll go through a proverbial wall for me to make the project successful. The second reason I do it is because, before I tackle the project from a tactical standpoint, I like to make sure that everything's in alignment. And I'm not just talking like the alignment between departments. I'm talking about the alignment between, process indicators, performance indicators, and financial indicators on a more vertical level or a horizontal. So the vertical and horizontal are aligned. When you combine that alignment with the motivations that I spoke of, it gives you a pretty good tapestry as to the qualitative incentives for each particular person in each particular department. At that point, it allows you to kind of put the right people in the right places, doing the right things during implementation ahead of time, and you can always adjust as you go once you know those things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. So some really, really powerful insights there. And in fact, you are actually going to the next topic, which I was going to bring, and that is going to be how to build the initial champion. So I think the surveys are going to be one of the tools that are going to help us in finding the initial champion. So thank you for that. The alignment, I think, is extremely critical overall, the way you mentioned that you need to agree on the KPIs. You need to agree on the performance and process indicators also you mentioned, right? And then overall from the vertical and horizontal perspective, you need to align yourself. So great. Before I move to Paul, I have one shout out from the guest. Hey, Kathy, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, just ask in the comment section. We'll be more than happy to answer for you. Okay, so now, Paul, what are factors in your opinion? Would you like to add anything? Do you agree, disagree with anything that has been said so far? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much agree with 99% of what's said, right? I think we're all on the same page with it. And what's interesting are the key words: influence and expertise.
Yeah,
must-haves, right? Especially when it comes to who's leading the team, who's designing what the team's going to do, and then who's going to start to build it. But what I find a lot in especially smaller manufacturers is finding the influence and expertise typically isn't the same person. And usually a place where they may go wrong is automatically assuming that the IT, if they have an entire department, the IT department is loaded with people with expertise and influence. So they just have the entire project from the beginning. And that's a pitfall, right? You may get lucky that the CIO has got all of it and the director of IT has all of it. But what you really want to do is evaluate that first. If you're the CFO or the executive who's, has the purse strings, right? The decision-making power about moving in this direction of digital transformation, whether it's enterprise-wide software or even just a targeted effort to improve one area, evaluate who is really influential. And I like to, when I talk to leaders in companies about this, I call it seeking out an ambassador, because what you're going to find is people that are excited about the change within the organization when they know about it. A lot of times they may be the one that has no knowledge about digital anything yet, so they don't have the expertise, yet they may be very influential as far as pulling a team together, keeping people interested in the change, and also keeping people excited through the project, because some of these transformations could be 12 months, some of them are 5 years, and it's hard to maintain, to Ryan's point around motivations and things like that. The energy and the excitement about a project at the beginning may start to dwindle quickly, and that's where influence saves you, right? You've got to have somebody, not a cheerleader, but somebody who can rally people around. Let's get back to the objective, get back on course, get back on budget, back on schedule. They may not necessarily be a subject matter expert, but they're I like to call them the ambassadors of the change. So it's kind of that initial leader, the champion, whether it's the CFO or it could be the CTO, CIO, CEO, who wants to make this change in a manufacturing company. Start, putting the feelers out there and almost surveying and investigating who really understands the need for this and wants it and is hungry for it, and they become your ambassador of the message of why we're doing this. And they're usually end up being the ones that are more skilled at putting the right team together than the initial leader, if that makes sense.
Yeah, amazing thoughts there. And you are actually hitting on some of the points that Ryan had hit. So I guess, the evaluation is definitely going to be extremely important, how you are going to be finding your initial ambassador, but you are, providing the distinction between your expertise and influence. And sometimes you mentioned a very good point that, your business leaders may not have the IT expertise, but they probably need to come midway so that they can at least communicate with the IT leaders, and IT leaders may have the expertise, but still they both need to understand the business and IT both to be able to create that influence, and they cannot simply pretend that they have the expertise. Great insights there. Chris, what are your thoughts so far? Do you agree with everything? I know you have seen a lot of field implementations as well. I know this topic could be easy. Everybody's going to agree with it, but then the implementations fail, and they fail primarily because of team. So I want the real insights here. What works, what does not?
Sure. Terminology, right? Executive sponsorship. We've heard that from everybody. So that is absolutely imperative. I didn't hear you guys say project manager yet. You need a project manager on the team. And traditionally, I guess you guys look at the development of project management inside of orgs. It came out of IT, right? IT, because you're doing a server upgrade, you better project manage it. Accounting typically has never had project managers. Whether IT can be the project manager or not, but just let's get some independence there. And the other thing I'm hearing you throw around, we call them business process owners. And so as you look at the organization, and it's not like there's a survey said, hey, we'll let you apply for the position. It really is, who's the incumbent, who owns that set of processes in the org. If they're net new processes, that's a different conversation. But, the process owners typically are, looking people that can make decisions, that can weigh in, that share the company's vision. So there's a lot of attributes in those process owners. Are they the champions? Do they become the subject matter experts? A lot of times somebody that's not on the radar will show up as a subject matter expert or will blossom into a champion. So those are always things you're looking for. But those are some of the key roles: sponsorship, the project management, as well as the process owners. And, there's a lot of other minutia, but if you get that representation normally, and that's enterprise wide. So you're going to get people from all walks if you're looking for the people that own those different processes. So those are my spin. And again, we hold those people accountable. And again, if you do a client team readiness assessment before you engage, you may find, well, you got big gaps. You're like, oh, we're going to go hire somebody. Well, that's difficult too, because you bring somebody in that's got a whole different opinion and says, oh, I think we should go this way. So you got to be very careful about that. And anyway, there's still challenges in that. That's my spin.
So yeah, you definitely hit on some very important point, and especially the point about the project manager, extremely important from the role perspective. But I like to redefine that, because typically in my experience, project managers are probably going to be the most hated people, just because the way they approach things, as opposed to doing things more from the influence perspective. They need to drive themselves as sort of the influence leader, that, you know what, whatever I'm doing, that needs to be communicated. And Amanda, you talk about this a lot, that communication is really important, the vision is really important, and it's really going to be onto the project manager, that, hey guys, I know that you are doing tick 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 tick, but what your real role is really to communicate what the vision is, why you are having those meetings, why people need to fill those timesheets. You need to communicate all of that, so that people understand the value of the task that you are actually telling them to do or asking them to perform. So now let's move to the next point, which is going to be really building the champions. And I know there's going to be a lot of emotional conversation about who are going to be the right champions. I don't know if there's going to be agreement, but Amanda, what is your process, and what kind of people do you like to see as your initial champions or the sponsors who are going to carry your vision forward? Let's say if you were the executive.
Yeah. So first off, I want to say I'm not looking for a sponsor on the back of a t-shirt. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about someone that's going to be able to get their hands dirty and really influence others, like we've already talked about, to ensure that they're removing roadblocks and really getting engaged. But the process that I go through is really looking at champions in 4 different ways. First of all, you have your super influencers, like those people around the organization that they might not be on the project, but we can engage them to make sure that they're influencing others. We also have what we call lovingly the convert champions. And convert champions are those people who always resist change. Like, you just know that Jim down the street is going to, or around the corner, whatever, he's going to resist the change. But if we can get him on board, he's going to be one of the best champions for this change. So everyone's going to look at Jim and go, Jim never accepts change. Why is he accepting this one? And I'm going to follow along. Okay. Then we have strategic advisors. Strategic advisors might not have a lot of influence in the organization, but they have a great pulse of what's going on. What is the word on the street? How are people reacting? And they have those relationships where they're going to feed back the information to you. So that could be an executive. It could be someone doing the work. It's those people who just know what's going on that you can bring into the organization. And then the last one is really your executive sponsor, right? Those people who, at the end of the day, are ultimately accountable for the success or failure of the program. They are going to be the barriers, removing those barriers, et cetera. Chris, I'm so glad that you brought up the process owner. I was a process owner in my past life. That was my official title of the source through pay process. And I became the day-to-day leader of a lot of programs, but I always had a strong executive leader that could clear the way when I needed it. So thank you for bringing that very important topic up. But those are the 4 different areas of champions that we look at. And then we go through and we interview, and we literally talk to people. We talk to the teams to identify who these people are. And then we talk to them individually to see if they have the capability, see if they're going to play that role or not. And then we nurture those relationships throughout the project.
So Amanda, let's say if I'm actually going to have a clarifying question there. So let's say if you were to summarize the key traits that anybody should be looking in the champions, obviously they need to have different skill set to be able to be part of the team, right? But what are some of the key traits in your opinion that anybody should be looking at when they are recruiting the champions?
I think that they know they have the expertise. They sit in a chair that is relevant. They have the pulse of the organization. Is very important, and that they have the influence where needed. Some people will have direct influence over people. Some will have the broader macro view. But those are what it really comes down to.
Interesting. And I am going to summarize one of the points that you mentioned, about keeping the hands dirty. And that is, again, going back to project managers that, and I actually have one story that I would like to share with you guys between the relationship between the engineers and the machinists. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the manufacturing shop floor, but Jennifer and Paul, I'm pretty sure you guys can relate. So the relationship between machinist and engineer, sometimes the communication could be a blockage, because these engineers, they are going to think that, I know everything, but machinist is going to think that you don't have any real life experience. Okay, and what engineers do, and in this particular story, what engineer actually did this, he was trying to say, I need one assembly to be done, and the assembly was super simple, and the machinist was saying, you just need a washer. I can give it to you, for free if you want. But this guy was like, I am asking you to do something, just do it. Okay, he had this beautiful design. There were tolerances on the design, and then machinist actually, went ahead and did that. That actually costed $600. Okay, but then their boss came, and then finally what happened is they really needed a washer. Okay, they never needed that, but engineer did not communicate, why he was doing that, or why, what was the purpose of that, assembly that he or she was trying to build. And, it was just, top-down approach. I am the engineer. I know my game. Okay, just do it. So this is the communication block that I am talking about. That is going to happen in a lot of different teams. So Jennifer, now I'm going to move to you, because you have a lot of manufacturing background, and that's why I wanted to mention the manufacturing story, so that you can tell, okay, what are some of the key traits that are going to be super important?
Well, I think that's a really important story that you told, because I think that happens every day. That mismatch of I know more than you do and you don't know what I do. I think that's really important. So I'll say that in all teams working in digital transformations, it's scary, and it's going to take a lot of listening to the other people's perspectives. So I would say listening is probably the number one trait or activity that anybody involved in a digital transformation needs to adopt. As far as leadership goes, there's three things that I try to practice myself, and I think this holds true for successful leaders in the digital space, and that is to have emotional intelligence, which means you understand human nature and understand what's coming at you in multiple ways, and you can deal with it. Two, you do have to be technically astute. You mentioned it before as you were talking about, as Joanne Martinez said, you can't just pay lip service to this. You actually have to know what you're talking about, because if you are advocating for something that people don't want to do, you've got to be able to make a case. You've got to be able to give that elevator pitch about why it's important to do for your organization. And then the third thing, and this is the hardest, is to kind of invoke Brene Brown's Dare to Lead techniques, which are focused on bravery and vulnerability, because going digital is really, really hard, and it's fraught with a lot of emotion around people thinking they're going to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And so that is something that you've got to dig deep into. And so it's one of the things we try to do is balance uplifting the workforce, but at the same time going, but we could get a whole lot of automation and more accuracy, and you guys can be even prouder of your products that you build today. And so tying into finding what those motivators are, Ryan, I think you mentioned that finding those motivators are really important. So that's the three things I've got.
Yeah, you hit on some really, really important things, and listening is actually part of the communication skills. And if your leaders are going to be doing just the lip service, and I'm going back to my project manager, if the project managers are going to be doing just the lip service, nobody is going to listen to you. Okay, so really know your stuff, your ability to be able to connect with people. And in my opinion, the way I like to see things is, in my experience, when we talk about the manufacturing organizations, your real users are the people who are working on the shop floor. If you are not able to relate with them, if you're not able to connect with them, then you are probably not doing your job. So that's why you're listening, connecting, and that's how you can probably make a case. And Amanda, I think she's speaking your language now because watching the emotional response, right?
Yes.
So good stuff. I like it. Okay, Ryan, now to you. So okay, what are some of the criteria? Let's say if you were the executive, you are building your own team. Okay, everything is at stake. When you are going to build this team, when you are doing this initiative, maybe some people are going to resign. Maybe the project is going to fail. Maybe you are going to lose your job. Who knows? Okay, so this is your project, and you have to select a team and make sure that this initiative is going to be successful. What are some of the traits that you are going to look for in the people?
First off, that's a lot of pressure, Sam. I appreciate that. Secondly, I in all seriousness, I think one of the biggest things is that there needs to be a definition of success. Yeah. And it can't just be one number saying, okay, we want to have 95% accuracy, because that's, let's be honest, that's crap. It needs to be, you need to define success in qualitative and quantitative ways. And it can't just be, like I said, one big number. It's okay, what are the specific, definitions of success within each department, within each user, which goes back to motivations, etc. But on a qualitative, from a qualitative standpoint, what will kind of puff the chest out of your people? And it's not so much the success that I would worry about. My main worry would be, after this, during the project is one thing. After the project, when my users are actually using it, what people don't understand is that systems are cement, and they're just pouring over existing processes. So if you're not fixing your processes ahead of time, you're pouring cement over a broken process, which you need this massive hammer to kind of crumble to build it back up again. So what I need from my people, like definite characteristics of a good team, you kind of need to have somebody who sees the big picture and yet looks at incremental wins, right? I go back to almost every conversation I have from a system standpoint goes back to good strategy, bad strategy, right? Good strategy is, how do we get a bunch of incremental wins to get momentum to keep going? And do we need to plan past the first roadblock or not? Because typically you don't. Typically, it's really hard to kind of have a risk mitigation if you don't know what the risk is, right? So you can have some buffer, but sure, it's not really that necessary. But I think what you need is, you need somebody who sees the need for incremental wins. You need somebody who sees the big picture, though, and kind of takes the view of everything. Adaptability is huge, because nothing is linear when it comes to put a system in. There's always kind of there's not so much A to B, there's A, B, A, C on the way to B, and then we haven't talked about Z, right? So there's so many things that can go wrong. But I think the biggest thing is there's an old saying, I forget who put it forth, but it's the importance of the leader, and the leader is someone who thinks like a person of action and acts like a person of thought, right? Every action needs to have some kind of cerebral meaning behind it, and every thought needs to be how are we thinking forward and moving forward with this thought process. So the biggest thing I think is just that leadership, the adaptability of the people, understanding that nothing is done tomorrow, so you need those incremental wins, but also just understanding that everyone's different and motivations are different and people are different, which leads back to what Jennifer said about emotional intelligence. A good champion, a good leader, a good evangelist understands that and takes the good from each person, each team member, and kind of puts that together to build this super team to take the project on.
Yeah, I think you hit on some really, really important points, and I love the way you like to emphasize on the big picture and the alignment. I think that is super important. And the adaptability also, you mentioned that, that is super important because you are working on the real world scenarios. So even if you may have a plan, that is probably going to change on a daily basis. And now, if you cannot appreciate and understand the incremental wins, how are you going to communicate that to the others. So it's really important that you are going to embrace that yourself. And I like the way you stated the quote, because in my experience, when you talk to, let's say, the people who really know their subject matter expertise, sometimes it's very hard for them to be sort of this, the thinking person. And the thinking person, it's very hard for them to be the doing person. And it's very hard to find that balance in a person, but that's exactly what you need when you are hiring these champions who can balance both of these things, the thinking as well as the doing, so that through doing, they can influence others. If you don't know anything about doing aspect, then obviously you are not going to have influence, because other people are going to think that you are simply doing the lip service. But thinking and planning is equally important as well, even if you are doing it in the incremental manner. Thank you so much, Ryan, for that. Paul, what are your thoughts so far in building the initial champions?
Yeah, a lot of good points are made already. And so some of the things I guess I'll add that haven't been said already, because I agree with pretty much all of it to this point. Intrinsic sort of traits that people have are sometimes hard for an executive to identify, because they may not know, they don't spend every single day with each person. As much as we all would love for a leader to do that,
yeah,
they have other things to do, like run the business and interface with customers and things. So it's not easy for them. But what they can use as some quick tricks that I've seen to effectively put together a strong team that's at least going to be cohesive and quickly trust each other, because that's critical, is social people. So ones that you kind of know because you hear about, you see them, they say hi to you when you're walking from your car in the morning. Just typically those kinds of people that have that social, not necessarily just outgoing or personable, but people that socially move around the organization. So everyone knows of them and they know of everyone. It's not a surefire way to have a strong team, but typically people like that initially are going to connect a lot of the dots for you. They're going to be able to tell you who you need to bring in that knows how to do it, who's reliable, who's trustworthy, who cares. They're going to have a lot of that insight because they talk to everybody. And as sometimes we all know, working in different organizations, right? Sometimes that social person is the one that everyone's like, oh, here she comes again, or here he comes again. But oftentimes they're a secret weapon. So reaching out to them, pulling them in initially and just having a discussion, they're going to fire off so much insight about who's the creative people, who are the doers, who are the thinkers, who are the planners. So that's one good strategy I've seen work really well. And another one that's actually kind of interesting I'll throw out, and it's a little bit of the lean thinking we'll bring in here, is hopefully we're all under the assumption that the digital transformation is happening to improve the way you bring value to your customers, right? Somehow to grow your business because of customer attraction, customer spending with you, that kind of stuff. So if we assume that's already established, bring in the major customer as a partner or as even a champion. In one instance, I saw that be super effective, where our champion was actually the external customer that had a lot of pull because they were a bulk of our business. So when representatives from there came to walk the process and see the implementation, to look at our project roadmap and understand where we were, what the struggles were, when they were asking those questions, there was no defensiveness by the team. There was no apprehension to tell the truth, because in a lot of ways, people in the room felt like, oh my gosh, this guy Sean is here. He's like this name we've just heard about because he spends, millions of dollars with us every quarter. He's sitting in the room asking me what I'm struggling with, or what I think is causing, creating a miss on a scheduled date. And they don't get nervous or scared. People respond to that because like, if we make this guy happy, he's going to pay us more. We're all going to get raises. We're all going to keep our jobs, which is huge in manufacturing. So that could be another really creative strategy for an executive to think about, is who do you already know really well that represents your large customers or your critical ones that you're trying to grow with. Maybe they're your smallest and you want them to be your biggest. Reach out, bring them in and give them insight to the project. Ask for their thoughts about it, but ask them to weigh in terms of how much they think that's going to change their life in the way they do business with you. Because number one, they might tell you something that if you missed it, you would have wasted a lot of time and money. And number two, they might actually start to take a a deeper interest in what your business and company is all about at a people level. And the more engaged they get there at the emotional connection, the better chance you have of them sticking with you when things get tough, even if it might cost them a little bit more money. So that can be a really powerful strategy as well.
So some very interesting comments there, and I completely agree with you that, if you are part of the larger organization or the division where you are running a large initiative, you are probably not going to have much time to engage with your key users. And a great trick that, you need to build a trustworthy team that is going to help you identify the right team and the champions as well. But at the same time, in my experience, when you bring this layer, what happens is sometimes they might be filtering the information and you might not be getting the actual information from the floor. So the other trick that I am probably going to mention from my experience, based on what I have seen some of the CEOs do really well. Again, they are not going to have time to talk to everybody in the organization. But if you can spot check with just some users randomly, okay, just have one-on-one conversation, unfiltered conversation. Don't speak, just listen, okay, make notes. See what is happening, get the pulse of the shop floor of the warehouse, so that the information is not completely filtered up. And by the way, I have seen a lot of crazy issues happening just because of that. There could be things like discrimination. I just cannot tell you how important that is to stay relevant in your organization by staying engaged with your users, and your users are going to be on the shop floor, in the warehouse. Those are the people who make your organization. The other thing that you mentioned about bringing the external customer, which is a great point. If you can bring the insight, the only challenge I'm going to have with this is, especially if you're bringing your major customer, typically the biggest customer is probably not the representation of your entire business. Okay, so and nobody argues with the customer, especially the big ones. So sometimes, you might be driving your digital transformation towards just one customer. I don't know if that is going to be completely relevant for the whole organization. So I would think that, that people should keep that in mind when they are just taking the feedback. If they are simply taking the feedback or survey from the customer, great point. You should always do that because, that's the customer voice. But I don't know if customers should always be the champion. And I am actually looking to see what others have to say about these points. Chris, now on to you. What are some of the factors? Do you agree, disagree, based on what have been said overall?
Sure. Assumptions that the project is defined already. So
yeah.
If we've got a project defined, we've got scope. I can agree with customer participation. Let's use the example. Great. We're going to build a digital platform for e-commerce or in a customer experience portal. Great. Now I do need a focus group of multiple customers, and maybe it's engineering context. Maybe they get an interactive configurator on the website and they get to do more of that you get where I'm going if we're doing configured order type of stuff. But that's where a customer focus group would come in. I still think the champions, in terms of the org, who they pick and who leadership picks, again, criteria, you want them in the business for a few years, but you don't want the 30-year veterans, right? Because they're going to be, but you want someone 3 years, whatever, that's going to stay around, that really does passion, energy, openness, right? And, the topics of vulnerability, transparency as you look at building the teams, I think you're just going to have to assume that people aren't going to have all those skill sets, and that you put some emphasis on building that team once you have identified the people and teach them some of those skills to make it a more effective process. Just a couple other comments there. But like I said, customers are going to give you good insight. But again, if the project's defined, it's more of a focus group. If you're saying, hey, what kind of features do we need that's really going to, appeal and give you a bigger bang on that type of a project. But I think it's going to be contextual, depending on the nature of the project, as to who's that outside participant that's contributing ideas on what's going to hit that target better. Certainly executive team's going to have some vision of, hey, this project's going to get this kind of an ROI, but you still want to quantitatively prove it up, as you said, Ryan. So you want some devil in the details there. So
yeah, so thank you so much, Chris, and some amazing insights. And again, we are not disagreeing that, the customer has to be part of the process, if possible, if you can bring them. But I think focus groups could probably be slightly better, just because you are diversifying the power struggle there with respect to just one customer, because when you bring multiple customers, then they are all going to have their viewpoint. So in that as well, maybe just build a team, maybe have some smaller customers, some bigger customers, so that everybody's voice is included inside the customer, because they are not going to be afraid of speaking. Let's say you are small or big, I mean, they don't necessarily care. It's just a focus group. So I think that's a very good idea there. Now, before we move to the next point, I have one shout out from the guest, and that's going to be, hey Sneha, thank you so much for joining, and great comment. Yes, you have to move to the Gemba. I don't know if everybody agrees with it. We can discuss on that as well if you have any comment for Sneha. But thank you so much, Sneha, for joining today. Now, Amanda, I'm actually going to move to you. Now, I don't know if you have any disagreement or agreement so far, whatever has been said, but we have the next question, which is going to be related to churn, managing churn in the team. So first, start with whatever has been said so far. If you agree, disagree, based on the customer process or the building the layer, to help the executive team, but share your insights about the churn as well, how to manage churn.
Okay. So something that I think, Ryan, you hit on it a little bit. Something that I've noticed, even when it come into projects and they're fully scoped, what I ask is, what does success look like?
Yeah.
And often I get like blank stares, or they go directly to the ROI business case number, but there's nothing else. So one advice as you're building out these champions, make sure that they all understand what success looks like holistically, because that provides like a true north for the entire team to have the conversations to make sure that we're focusing on the right things moving forward. So that's just one additional comment there. Now, churn, having success metrics helps with churn too. That's why I kind of wanted to bring it up. So if you have a team that you're trying, like, it's a long implementation. I've been on implementations that have lasted 3 years. Okay, that's a long time to dedicate your life and stay motivated. So believe me, I've been there. So knowing what you're trying to go after and then chunking it into littler bite-sized pieces helps on those longer projects. So if you can have something that you can achieve in the next 90 days or in the next 60 days, where you're looking at a shorter time period that the team can accomplish together, that goes a long way to helping reduce that amount of churn on the team, like people leaving the team, new people coming in. Now, I will say I have taken over projects mid-cycle, like they're just getting through design or heading into whatever, and I've purposely created that churn because we had the right people that had the right technical expertise up front, but they weren't the right people for the long term. So there are times when you might want to have that churn, but I would say that making sure that you have success metrics, that you look at what are those milestones that we can all achieve together, will help limit the unwanted churn on the team.
Okay, some amazing insights there, Amanda, and I love the way you are emphasizing on the alignment of different metrics. And data and buzzwords, in my experience, are the best tools that can be utilized for lift service. So it's very important that, number one, to understand those. When you say 95%, and Ryan, I think you mentioned this point, what does that 95% mean? Define that. When you talk about buzzwords, sorry, somebody had a comment. Okay, no. So define the buzzwords as well. Before we move to the next person, I have one comment from the guest, and I want to make sure that we have the shout out from the guest. So Melissa is actually agreeing with you, Amanda, that we need to, and by the way, Ryan as well, I guess, so we definitely need to redefine the success. So thank you so much, Melissa, for joining. If you have any question, comment, please keep them coming. We appreciate you. We appreciate your comment and insight. And then we have one more comment from Sneha. And Sneha is saying, define what success looks like. Great comment, Amanda. So Amanda, people are liking what you're saying. Thank you so much for that. Now, Jennifer, I'm going to move to you. I don't know whether you agree with everything that has been said so far. If you agree or disagree with anything, you can make comment about that. But most importantly, tell us what your perspective is on churn.
Churn is real. I'm actually in a process of a 6-year implementation, so that makes 3 years look simple. Churn is real, and we tend to get into this because we get into analysis paralysis. What we find is that early, often, regular communication and borderlining on over communication and irritating the crap out of people, repeating it 7 times, it is really, really helpful. One of the techniques and tools that we use to help structure that communication is we use the Agile Scrum ceremonies to set up 2-week sprints with very clear acceptance criteria, which goes down to, Amanda, your success metrics, making sure that the words that we put on any particular task are clear to everybody, and that we size them as well, either t-shirt sizes or Fibonacci series sizes, whatever your favorite sizing method is. And then we talk about it as a team. And so when you have that team dynamic saying, well, I think that's a extra large task, and somebody goes, no, it's a small task, and you go, oh, wait, why? And then you have these really defined, more interesting conversations. That is how you reduce the churn, is by getting really clear on what it is you're doing. And I kind of, on that index card, right? What are you doing? What are the success criteria? When is it going to be done, and how long does it take? Once that happens, then everybody's aligned. So that's what we've used. We know traditional project management methods don't work in these digital activities because you're tackling so many things at one time. It's very complicated. There's lots of threads to look at, and you need something more modern to look at.
Yeah, so some very interesting comments there, especially around the t-shirt sizing, right? So these tools are great to simplify things so that people can understand, but alignment is equally important. Understanding what is the Excel for one person versus the other is really important. Thank you so much for that. But I am actually going to mention one of the comment that we have in the guest, and I am really meaning that, because the external customers and the internal customers are going to be equally important. So here the comments from the internal team members versus the external team members are equally important. Thank you so much, Ryan, for that comment. And guys, even if the panelists have the comment, please keep them coming. It's really important, to have your opinion as well. So if you guys have any comment, we'll bring those to the stage as well. And we have some more comments here. Yeah, I agree with Sneha. Sneha, 6 years is a long project. Maybe we should probably do an episode just on that project. There are going to be so many learnings, Jennifer. Then we have a comment from Amanda. Amanda, I don't know what was that about.
I was saying 6 years is a long time.
Yep.
6 years, that's a lot.
Yep, and then we have one more comment from Sneha. Sneha, yes, these sprints cause churn too. How do you avoid scope creep? I don't know if we are going to have any insight there. I would love if Jennifer, do you want to address that?
Yeah, sprints are just a time that you agree to do something. So having very descriptive user stories and task decomposition and acceptance criteria that everybody understands is really important. And we even make people do an approval task on a card. Like, I've written up this user story and acceptance criteria. Do you agree? If not, let's have a conversation about it. So I think that's the key. One of the other Scrum ceremony techniques and tools is to have a daily stand-up. Yeah. They really are needed. They're short, they're sweet. What'd you do yesterday? What are you doing today? Do you have any impediments? Done. And then you move on to the next person. That's how teams communicate. They got to do it verbally. They got to do it written. So the more clear that the teams are and in alignment, lockstep, that's how you avoid the churn.
Okay, amazing. Does anybody else has anything to add for Sneha's question before we move to the next person? Paul, Chris, Ryan?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, love it. So we have some more comments. We want to make sure that we are going through all of those comments before we move to the next person. So we have one comment from Amanda, and Amanda is talking about the early engagement of the internal customers. Yes, exactly. So early engagement is definitely important. Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing that. And then we have some comments from Sneha. Yes, we are going to do this more often. We are going to be making it slightly more interactive overall. If you guys have any questions, just keep them coming. As long as they are relevant to the topic, we will be bringing them to the stage. Sneha is actually agreeing with you, Jennifer, I guess. The daily stand-up and the Kaizen boards, they are super important as well. And there is a typo there. So that's it for the comments. Keep them coming, guys, and we will be bringing the comments to the stage. Ryan, now your turn. Do you agree, disagree? What is your perspective on churn so far?
Oh, for the sake of brevity, 100%. I agree with everything. Defining success, acceptance criteria. I think the one thing that I would very quickly add is that it's very important to look at almost like from a net promoter score aspect. You're always gonna have promoters, you're always gonna have detractors. Like, don't worry about it, right? Almost have like a strategy to deal with it ahead of time, but it's gonna happen. No one is going to be happy all the time about the project. People are gonna get ticked off. People are gonna be excited. They're gonna be angry. They're going to go through a range of emotions throughout the project. Focus on the middle. Focus on who you can easily kind of not disregard, but categorize promoters and detractors. Focus in the middle. If you can strengthen the middle, your project will turn out okay.
Yeah, love your insight about net promoter score and focusing on middle. Thank you so much for that. Paul, so we are probably going to be moving slightly quicker just because we are running out of time. So can you share your opinion about churn?
Yeah, I think having it kind of mapped out in advance with what success looks like and the milestones, then the only thing I'd add would be celebrate the wins, celebrate it often, whether it's at every daily stand-up or the Friday stand-up. And it doesn't have to be anything other than just open verbal recognition amongst the team of implementers and doers, right? And celebrate the victories, even if you missed a milestone or a goal. Look for first what did we do that worked well, and then later on, when you do your triage or your troubleshooting, problem solving, you talk about what didn't work well, but have that as a standard standing item. And one other thing too, like to Chris's point earlier about not everyone's going to have those things like vulnerability or the emotional intelligence, right? Which are critical, which Jennifer brought up. You can train that. And maybe that's part of the project plan, the roadmap, if it's something 12 months or, 6 years, hopefully not. But if it is, maybe to minimize churn and keep some of the core players on the team, you have frequent, maybe quarterly trainings to give them new skills around courage, vulnerability, even leadership, right? Regardless of their rank in the organization.
Yeah, amazing insights there about the celebration. And by the way, Tim, trolling is definitely out. Can we get thumbs up for Tim, guys from the room? Okay, I think everybody's agreeing with me. I'm gonna take that as agreement. So we have Tim's comment, and then we have Sneha's comment as well. We want to make sure that we are able to address that. So yes, Sneha is agreeing with you. Paul. Great. We have one more comment from Sneha. So now, Chris, we are going to move to you. What is your perspective on churn?
So, there's a few things there. So to the point, we are training the clients at the onset of the project because we found that too many risks. So if we train them better, so internal, external, churn, right? Incentives. So put incentives on the project, right? The money. All right. So I've got a project that's going live for a company that's, but everybody on the team is getting some spiffs. And so you cross the finish line, right? But I think you define, if you're defining ROI on the project, there's a tangible value to succeeding. You've defined success, right? Everybody's on the same page, alignment. Hey guys, here's the prize at the end of the day. Stay focused, stay committed, stay throughout. And I think you absolutely put that on the table. I mean, why wouldn't you? You said, Paul, I think you said it didn't have to be monetary. I'm sorry. I'm not that I want to bribe everybody, but I want insurance and risk mitigation and to put something out there, a target. And again, everybody's got to win. So that's my final comment there.
Yeah, amazing insight. And irrespective of how much you want to say that money is not important, it's always important. It's all about money, baby.
And make it an incentive trip. It doesn't have to be, hey, we're all going to Vegas or going to the islands. I mean, there's different ways to do non-monetary to get people to really get excited about, overperforming. So.
All right, guys. So we are going to do the quick round right now. Just closing advice in one quick sentence. Okay. So I am actually going to start with you, Chris, right now, just because you are slightly more experienced on the panel. Just one sentence.
Sure. You build a team, find the best people, put the best people on the team. Okay. Just that simple.
Love it. Put the best people on the team. Love it. Paul, your closing advice, one sentence.
Wow, that's I'm in the hot seat. I would say go back and watch the replay of this. You'll have all the answers.
Love the way Paul thinks.
Cheated.
Definitely, it's a very impactful episode. Ryan, your advice in one sentence.
One sentence that celebrate the wins and embrace the failures.
Yeah, love it. Jennifer, your closing advice in one sentence.
Get out of your conference room and walk the floor and listen to what people have to say.
Yes.
Exactly, so true. Walk the floor. Amanda, your closing advice in one sentence.
Fail quickly, recover quickly.
Fail quickly. Amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I think this was a super powerful episode. Great insights. And guys, if you're joining for the first time, we meet every Thursday for our digital transformation series. We bring you one topic related to digital transformation. It's always going to be at 4:30 on LinkedIn Live, and we are going to be bringing you exciting panels in the future. So don't miss next week's show. We are going to be here at 4:30. On that note, I really want to thank everyone for joining and for their time.
You got it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.